The cameras were rolling, the lights blinding, and millions of eyes glued to the screen, when suddenly, the room seemed to fracture. Meghan Markle, poised moments ago, rose abruptly from her chair, her expression a storm barely contained. A sharp intake of breath from the studio audience rippled like a wave, their murmurs almost deafening in the charged silence. Phones were raised instinctively, recording every second of the unraveling scene, as if instinct told everyone that history was unfolding live. Allison Hammond remained seated, calm, her posture a study in poise and control. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension settle for a heartbeat before responding, her gaze steady on Meghan. But the room, the very air, was thick with disbelief. Shock, outrage, curiosity, the emotional cocktail was undeniable. Social media would explode in mere moments, yet for those in the studio, the moment was raw, visceral, impossible to ignore. Flashing cameras captured the subtle tremor in Meghan's hands, the slight shift in her stance, as though the carefully rehearsed narrative of this interview had crumbled beneath her feet. Every gesture, every pause, every half-spoken word was magnified, dissected by viewers who could feel the collision of personalities across continents. The tension was cinematic, almost unbearable, yet irresistible. People leaned forward in their chairs, unable to look away, hearts racing in unison with the beat of the unfolding drama. But this was more than a fleeting burst of live TV chaos. Beneath the surface, the story was darker, more tangled, and far more consequential than anyone could anticipate. The cameras, the microphones, even the studio lights seemed to hum with an unspoken promise. What was about to unfold would expose hidden truths, ignite debates, and challenge assumptions. Every second, every glance, every carefully measured word teetered on the edge of revelation. And then, just as the audience braced itself for a simple resolution, Meghan pivoted sharply, her voice rising in a tone that cracked the illusion of composure. The nation collectively inhaled, hearts suspended. Something had been triggered, a confrontation that would ripple far beyond the walls of the studio. But what sparked this live TV showdown was far deeper than anyone expected. Secrets, tension, and unspoken grievances were poised to spill into the light, and no one would walk away unchanged. The cameras had barely stopped whirring from the initial shock when the deeper story began to take shape. This wasn't just another celebrity spat. Another headline for tabloids to chew on. Meghan Markle's appearance on This Morning carried weight far beyond the studio walls. For millions watching at home, it was a rare glimpse into the private turbulence of one of the most scrutinized figures in the world, a woman who had once been royalty yet now moved in a landscape where every word, every expression, could spark debate, outrage, or admiration. The stakes were monumental. Allison Hammond understood this better than anyone. With decades of experience navigating the delicate balance between public expectation and personal integrity, she had stepped into the studio not merely to interview, but to uphold a standard. Calm, grounded, and unfaltering, Allison represented the measured voice of reason, the anchor in the storm of fame and entitlement. Meghan, on the other hand, carried the invisible weight of her own narrative, one crafted across continents, in headlines, podcasts, and viral videos. She was emotionally charged, acutely aware of the cameras, the millions of viewers forming judgments in real time, and the social media mobs ready to explode at the slightest provocation. The tension in the room was not just personal, it was cultural, political, and social. This was a royal figure confronting a media personality in the heart of daytime television, a space where ordinary life meets extraordinary influence. Immigrant communities, identity-conscious viewers, and progressive audiences watched closely, seeing in Meghan a story of struggle, resilience, and the pressure of belonging in a world that demanded perfection. And yet, the narrative was fragile. Every glance, every hesitation, every word teetered on the edge between empowerment and humiliation. One misstep, one moment of perceived arrogance, could redefine public perception entirely. Allison knew the power of subtlety. Her questions were carefully crafted, precise, and unflinching, designed not to provoke recklessness but to illuminate truth. She was the calm in a storm of expectations, the hero in a room primed for spectacle. Meghan's rising tension, the flush of frustration across her face, the slight bite in her tone, it all spoke volumes to those attuned to the interplay of dominance, control, and vulnerability. The world was watching, yes, but more than that, they were waiting. Waiting to see which version of Meghan would emerge, the poised, measured public figure, or the woman whose emotions threatened to redefine the conversation entirely. And as the minutes ticked by, the atmosphere thickened. The audience at home leaned closer to their screens, phones poised to record, Twitter feeds ready to ignite, hearts pounding in anticipation. The stakes were not abstract, they were deeply personal, touching on identity, belonging, and the universal struggle to maintain dignity under pressure. Every word spoken in that studio could ripple far beyond its walls, shaping debates in living rooms, offices, and online communities across the nation. But moments into the conversation, something unexpected ignited a firestorm. A subtle glance, a pointed question, and the careful balance of composure began to crack. Tension shifted from palpable to electric, anticipation to anxiety, curiosity to dread. For those watching, it was impossible to look away. Every heartbeat, every syllable, felt like a countdown toward an inevitable confrontation, one that would challenge assumptions, test resolve, and force both women, and the world watching, to reckon with truths no one had dared speak aloud. For all her fame, all her poise, and all the carefully curated images of royalty and elegance, Meghan Markle's public life had always carried its own shadows. To millions, she was a figure of glamour and resilience. A woman who had crossed continents and conventions to redefine what it meant to be a modern royal. But behind the headlines, the Instagram posts, and the carefully crafted interviews, there had always been tension, moments when the weight of expectation collided with the fragility of human emotion. Her story was littered with public controversies that, while sometimes minor in reality, were magnified by the relentless glare of the media. Every outfit, every smile, every misstep, no matter how small, was dissected, debated, and weaponized in online discourse. Meghan had learned early that fame could be both a shield and a trap, a platform for influence yet a cage of scrutiny. Yet with all this awareness, she was not immune to the pitfalls of ego, pride, and the pressure of perception. The very traits that had propelled her into public admiration, the charm, the eloquence, the confidence, could also become liabilities when confronted with an unyielding, observant opponent. In prior interviews, Meghan had displayed flashes of defensiveness, moments when her composure faltered and her carefully maintained narrative showed cracks. She had sparred with journalists, clashed with public figures, and even challenged institutions, all while maintaining the facade of poise. But each encounter left traces, a word misjudged, a tone too sharp, a gesture misread. These were the moments the world never forgot. Social media algorithms preserved them, newspapers highlighted them, and late-night commentators dissected them. Over time, the accumulation of these incidents painted a portrait of a figure capable of brilliance yet prone to volatile responses under pressure. Her arrogance was not overt, but it was perceptible, an undercurrent in interviews where she expected deference, a subtle impatience when questions pierced the polished surface. Public memory held these moments in sharp relief, magnifying them with every retelling. Critics argued that Meghan struggled to navigate the delicate dance of celebrity responsibility, that her confidence sometimes tipped into defensiveness, that her awareness of the spotlight occasionally became a source of tension rather than a tool for influence. And yet, the story was not simply one of flaw or miscalculation. It was a story of vulnerability. Behind every viral clip and every public critique was a woman navigating unprecedented pressure, a global audience scrutinizing not only her words but her very presence, a world measuring her identity against a standard few could ever reach. In this light, Meghan's moments of frustration were as human as they were headline-making, her missteps as relatable as they were amplified. The duality of her persona, the mix of brilliance and fragility, confidence and volatility, made her both compelling and dangerous in the arena of live television. This tension set the stage for the confrontation with Allison Hammond. Meghan's past had shaped her reactions, honed her defenses, and sharpened her instincts, but it also left her vulnerable to misjudgment. She carried with her the legacy of every public clash, every misinterpreted gesture, and every whispered critique. Each interaction had been a rehearsal for scrutiny, yet none could fully prepare her for a moment when poise met unflinching professionalism in real time. As the cameras refocused on the studio, the audience could almost feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Even with fame and fortune, no one was prepared for how this confrontation would unfold. The elegance and confidence that had defined Meghan's public persona now faced a force unshakable in its calm, a host grounded in principle, observation, and the quiet power of restraint. The collision was inevitable, the stakes impossibly high. And the outcome, unpredictable. And just as the first words were exchanged, it became clear that this was not merely a televised interview. It was a reckoning. A test of composure, of restraint, of the ability to navigate scrutiny without losing oneself. The audience, both in the studio and across the world, held its collective breath. Every glance, every word, every unspoken tension was magnified. The stage was set, the players defined, and the storm was about to break. Allison Hammond had spent decades mastering the art of poise under pressure. From her earliest days in broadcasting, she had learned that a moment of hesitation could be amplified into a headline, that a single misstep on live television could alter perception forever. Yet, she had also learned the power of calm, of observation, of listening before speaking. Her reputation was built not on theatrics, but on integrity, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. In a world dominated by flash and spectacle, Allison was the anchor, the steady hand in the storm of public discourse. Her journey had not been simple. She had grown up in a society that often underestimated her voice, that questioned her credibility because of her background, her identity, and the communities she represented. Every opportunity she earned was hard-won, every achievement a testament to resilience, perseverance, and the courage to speak despite the doubters. For immigrant communities, for women of color, and for viewers who had longed to see themselves reflected on screen with dignity and authority, Allison was a symbol of possibility, a living example of talent meeting tenacity. In her years on live television, Allison had faced countless challenging moments, fiery guests, unexpected interruptions, controversial statements. Each time, she had navigated the chaos with precision, turning tension into clarity, confrontation into conversation. Viewers came to trust her not just because of her intelligence, but because of her humanity, the way she could ask hard questions without aggression, hold people accountable without cruelty, and remain composed even when the world seemed to demand theatrics. This was her craft, honed through repetition and experience, and it would define her role in the coming showdown. Allison's approach to interviewing was not just professional, it was deeply empathetic. She understood the pressures her guests carried, the invisible weight of expectation, fame, or scrutiny. And yet, empathy did not mean compromise. She had a moral compass that guided her questions and a sense of fairness that demanded truth. For progressive audiences, immigrant-friendly viewers, and communities proud of identity and representation, Allison embodied the idea that courage and integrity were inseparable from competence. She was proof that one could be strong without being harsh, assertive without being aggressive, and principled without being performative. As the studio lights glimmered, Allison prepared for what would become a historic exchange. She knew the weight of the audience's gaze, the millions watching from homes across the country, the eyes of social media poised to judge, meme, and debate every syllable. But she did not flinch. She understood that the confrontation ahead would test not only her composure, but her ability to turn a moment of tension into a demonstration of dignity, reason, and emotional intelligence. She was ready, not for spectacle, but for truth. Her values were clear: fairness over favoritism, preparation over improvisation, calm over chaos. Every decision she made, every question she asked, was deliberate, anchored in principle and experience. And yet, beneath the professional exterior, there was a quiet anticipation. She knew that the collision ahead would demand all of her skill, all of her empathy, and all of her courage. The storm was coming, and she would meet it head-on. Allison's story also carried a broader resonance. For her viewers, especially those from marginalized communities, her presence on screen represented more than journalism. It represented visibility, possibility, and validation. Every poised response, every composed challenge, reaffirmed the belief that dignity could coexist with strength, that intelligence could prevail in moments of tension, and that identity was not a limitation but a foundation for influence. In this moment, she was not merely a host, she was a hero in her own right. A figure embodying the values that progressive, immigrant-friendly audiences had long championed. And now, as cameras turned their lenses toward the unfolding confrontation, Allison Hammond's preparation, resilience, and moral clarity would be put to the ultimate test. Across the world, viewers leaned closer, their hearts synchronized with the tension in the studio. The stage was set, the stakes impossibly high, and the clash of personalities inevitable. The hero had arrived, ready to meet the storm, and what happened next would grip the nation, spark debate, and leave no one watching untouched. With cameras rolling, the stage was set for a showdown that would grip the nation, test character, and illuminate the power of composure in the face of fame, tension, and spectacle. The studio seemed to hold its breath as the first words were exchanged. A polite greeting gave way to the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface, invisible yet palpable. Meghan's initial composure began to crack ever so slightly, a flash of impatience crossing her face as Allison asked the first pointed question. It was subtle, measured, but unmistakable, a challenge to the narrative Meghan had prepared for. A quiet insistence that truth, not image, would dominate this conversation. The audience, both in the studio and at home, could feel it immediately. The air thickened, charged with expectation and apprehension. Every twitch of an eyebrow, every brief pause, every shift of posture was magnified under the glare of the cameras. Phones were raised instinctively, capturing snippets for the inevitable social media storm. The murmurs of the studio audience grew, a low hum of suspense that seemed to echo across the room. Millions were watching, and everyone sensed that the ordinary rules of daytime television no longer applied. Meghan's responses were sharp, occasionally clipped, a subtle mixture of defensiveness and irritation. She attempted to redirect the conversation toward familiar narratives, rehearsed anecdotes that had once earned applause and headlines. But Allison was unflinching. She met each deflection with calm persistence, guiding the conversation with precision, and her composure only highlighted Meghan's growing tension. The contrast was stark, the poised, grounded journalist versus the increasingly agitated royal. Hero versus villain, not in a storybook sense, but in the clarity of who held control over the moment. The exchanges became more pointed, the stakes intensifying with each passing second. Allison's questions cut beneath surface-level politeness, asking what others feared to confront directly. Meghan's replies carried the weight of someone trained to navigate scrutiny, but even the most practiced demeanor cannot mask the subtle cracks of frustration when faced with relentless, principled questioning. For the viewers, the drama was magnetic. They leaned forward, hearts synchronized with the tension in the room, captivated by a duel that was as much about character as it was about words. Long pauses punctuated the dialogue, moments pregnant with meaning. A barely audible sigh, a subtle shift in seating, a fleeting glance toward the cameras, each action spoke volumes. Every viewer could sense that the conversation was teetering on the edge of eruption, that the careful equilibrium of civility could shatter at any moment. The stakes extended beyond this single interview. Social media feeds would erupt, commentary panels would analyze every gesture, and public opinion would pivot with a single misstep. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, the tension reached a tipping point. Meghan, feeling the invisible pressure of scrutiny and the relentless steadiness of her opponent, allowed a sharper tone to slip through. The subtle jabs, the pointed retorts, began to escalate, threading the conversation with a raw intensity that few had witnessed from her in a live setting. Allison's calm, measured responses only amplified the contrast. The audience felt it instinctively. The hero was not just holding her ground, she was gaining command of the narrative, her clarity piercing the haze of tension that had threatened to overwhelm the room. But just as the atmosphere approached its breaking point, Allison delivered a line so precise, so piercing, that the room collectively froze. Every eye locked, every breath held. The anticipation was unbearable, the moment electric. The stage was set for something unforgettable. And then the audience realized, in that suspended heartbeat, that what would come next could redefine the conversation, challenge assumptions, and leave everyone watching utterly stunned. The studio fell silent. Every camera lens, every microphone, every phone recording the moment seemed to converge on Allison Hammond as she leaned forward, her calm gaze fixed on Meghan Markle. The tension that had been building for minutes, hours, perhaps even years, now coalesced into a singular, electric moment. The world, watching from living rooms, offices, and phones across continents, collectively exhaled. This was the point of no return. Allison spoke, her voice steady, deliberate, each word chosen with surgical precision. "The public isn't interested in narratives that sidestep accountability," she said. Her eyes never wavered, her tone neither accusatory nor harsh, but undeniably powerful. "They want clarity, honesty, and acknowledgement of the consequences of your choices." There was a pause, a measured silence that allowed the weight of her words to settle. The cameras lingered, capturing every flicker of expression on Meghan's face. At first, Meghan's composure remained, though cracks were beginning to show. A subtle tightening of the jaw, a quick glance away, the brief flutter of hands, gestures that spoke louder than words ever could. It was as though she had been expecting a rehearsal, a softball conversation, a stage set to echo her own narrative. Instead, she faced an immovable force of clarity, someone unwilling to bend, compromise, or let performance overshadow truth. Allison continued, her rhythm unbroken. "Millions of people watch, not to see spectacle, but to witness integrity. To see someone confront tension, adversity, and expectation without losing sight of what matters. To see honesty triumph over ego." Every syllable landed like a pulse, each one resonating across the collective consciousness of the audience. Social media feeds, already primed with anticipation, erupted in real time. #Allison wins, #truth on screen, #mic drop moment trending within minutes. Clips were shared, dissected, and debated. The studio itself seemed to hum with the intensity, a microcosm of a world captivated by the collision of fame and principle. Meghan's attempt to regain control faltered. She spoke, but her words lacked the precision and force that had once commanded attention. The rehearsed anecdotes and familiar narratives now sounded defensive, rehearsed, and inadequate against the sharp, unwavering focus of Allison. The contrast was undeniable, the agitated, scrambling figure of a royal accustomed to deference, versus the poised, morally anchored journalist who wielded patience and preparation like a weapon. Every viewer could see it, feel it, and, for some, live it vicariously, the triumph of calm under pressure over spectacle fueled by entitlement. The audience in the studio gasped, then murmured, then leaned forward in unison. Each reaction amplified the momentum. Cameras zoomed in on subtle expressions, Meghan's fleeting frown, Allison's serene nod. The silent acknowledgement of the crowd. Viewers online mirrored the intensity. Every share, every like, every retweet became a small tremor in the seismic impact of the moment. Influencers, commentators, and celebrities weighed in instantly, some praising Allison's clarity, others dissecting Meghan's response, but all united in the recognition that the confrontation had reached a historic crescendo. And then Allison delivered the line that would define the moment: "Respect isn't commanded, it's earned." And true leadership, visibility, and influence come not from privilege or title, but from accountability and integrity. That is what the public deserves. The words hit like a gavel, final yet catalytic, reverberating across the studio and the world beyond. Meghan's shoulders slumped imperceptibly, a subtle surrender to the gravity of truth. The audience felt it, a collective acknowledgement that the balance had shifted irrevocably. Even as Meghan attempted one last interjection, Allison's composure absorbed it, deflected it, transformed it into context without losing her own rhythm. There was no need for theatrics, no need for dramatics. The hero's victory was not loud, it was precise, moral, and undeniable. The cameras captured it all. The silence between lines as telling as the words themselves, a cinematic pause that spoke volumes. Every viewer understood, the narrative had changed. Social media became a living archive of awe and analysis. Memes, commentaries, and viral clips exploded, dissecting every expression, gesture, and phrasing. Hashtags trending across continents validated Allison's triumph, while every misstep from Meghan was replayed and scrutinized with renewed intensity. This was more than television, it was a demonstration of accountability in real time, a lesson in composure, strategy, and moral clarity for anyone who ever watched and wondered how truth could prevail in the glare of fame. As the exchange drew to a close, Meghan's final words faltered, echoing against the wall of calm authority that Allison had built. The audience, holding their breath for the entirety of the encounter, exhaled collectively, some with awe, others with stunned disbelief. The confrontation had ended, but its reverberations were only beginning. The hero had delivered her mic drop, not through insult or theatrics, but through the quiet, undeniable force of principle. And as Meghan slowly rose and turned away, the room seemed to shift, the gravity of the moment settling into every viewer's consciousness. The storm had passed, but its ripples stretched far beyond the studio. The world had witnessed more than a confrontation, it had witnessed a masterclass in clarity, courage, and the quiet power of unwavering truth. The question now lingered in the collective mind: what would come next, and could anyone recover from the clarity of this unflinching mirror held up to fame? The moment Meghan Markle walked away, the studio seemed to exhale, but the world outside had only just begun to react. Within seconds, clips of the confrontation were circulating online, shared and reshared with captions that oscillated between awe, outrage, and incredulity. Millions of viewers, glued to their screens during the live broadcast, now became instant commentators, dissecting every syllable, every glance, every subtle gesture. Social media feeds erupted, with conversations igniting across platforms, trending worldwide. The debate was no longer confined to the studio, it had erupted across continents, touching living rooms, offices, and cafes alike. The reactions were immediate and visceral. Viewers praised Allison's composure, her precision, her unyielding calm. She was hailed as a masterclass in restraint, the embodiment of dignity meeting power head-on. Memes began to emerge, juxtaposing Meghan's flustered expressions with Allison's serene poise. Shared with captions that celebrated clarity over theatrics, principle over privilege. Commentators, journalists, and influencers across the spectrum weighed in, some dissecting the tension with surgical precision, others celebrating the moral lesson unfolding in real time. For Meghan, the fallout was instantaneous and unavoidable. Every hesitation, every defensive glance, every slight misstep replayed endlessly on screens around the world. Analysts debated whether this encounter would redefine public perception, questioning whether her carefully cultivated persona could survive the clarity and authority displayed by Allison. Royal commentators, daytime television critics, and pop culture columnists joined in the conversation, amplifying the narrative of a confrontation that transcended celebrity gossip and spoke to the broader themes of accountability, composure, and public responsibility. The ripple effect extended far beyond social media and commentary panels. Viewers began discussing the confrontation in workplaces, in classrooms, and among communities that had long felt underrepresented or overlooked. Progressive audiences, immigrant-friendly viewers, and those attuned to the dynamics of power and representation saw in Allison a hero. A figure who demonstrated that skill, integrity, and calm could triumph over status, celebrity, and entitlement. For these audiences, the moment was validating, a reflection of values they held dear: courage, fairness, and the quiet but undeniable power of principle. Even celebrities and public figures joined the discourse, offering praise, critique, or analysis. Each post or statement added layers to the conversation, expanding its reach and heightening the sense of historical significance. Talk shows replayed the key moments, dissecting the expressions, the timing, the subtle shifts in body language. Every viewer became a participant, every share a ripple, and every discussion a testament to the unexpected cultural weight of the confrontation. At the same time, the media landscape itself was shifting. Overnight, the story dominated headlines, not as a fleeting scandal, but as an illustration of accountability in action. It wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a collision of expectation, identity, and principle. The tension between Meghan's celebrity status and Allison's grounded authority became the lens through which audiences examined broader societal dynamics: who is allowed to speak, who is believed, and who holds the power when words meet scrutiny. The studio audience, initially captivated by live performance, now became part of a larger collective witness, their reactions amplified online. Every gasp, every whisper, every subtle nod contributed to the wave of admiration for Allison and sparked a conversation about dignity, professionalism, and courage. The narrative had shifted, the hero had emerged not with theatrics or anger, but with clarity, calm, and integrity. And yet, for all the praise and admiration, a question lingered: how would Meghan respond? Could she regain control of a narrative now dominated by precision, poise, and principle? The clash had ended in the studio, but the aftershocks were only beginning. Every viewer, every commentator, and every participant in the online debate waited, some with anticipation, others with dread, for the next chapter in a story that had already captured the attention and imagination of a global audience. The world had witnessed more than a heated argument, it had witnessed a lesson in composure, courage, and the enduring power of truth. And while the storm of commentary, memes, and viral clips raged on, one truth was clear: the impact of this confrontation would ripple far beyond the confines of daytime television, shaping discourse, perceptions, and expectations for weeks, months, and perhaps even years to come. As the dust settled, the true significance of the confrontation became clear. It was no longer just a clash between personalities, or a fleeting moment of daytime television drama. It was a lesson, a vivid demonstration of how dignity, integrity, and calm can triumph over anger, entitlement, and spectacle. Allison Hammond had shown, without raising her voice or resorting to theatrics, that composure and moral clarity are far more powerful than status or celebrity. The audience, both in the studio and across the world, recognized it instinctively. For viewers, especially those from immigrant communities and marginalized backgrounds, Allison's victory was deeply validating. It was proof that skill, preparation, and steadfast principles could prevail even in situations weighted by fame, influence, and societal expectation. Her conduct became a blueprint for courage under pressure, showing that true authority arises not from fear or intimidation, but from the quiet power of conscience and fairness. In every gesture, every pause, every carefully measured response, Allison reminded the world that heroism can take many forms, sometimes subtle, sometimes unseen, but always impactful. Meghan Markle's reaction underscored the lesson. Her flustered composure, the faltering of practiced narratives, and the evident struggle to regain control highlighted a universal truth: even privilege, influence, and preparation cannot substitute for character, restraint, and authenticity. The moment became a mirror reflecting the broader consequences of actions, the responsibility inherent in visibility, and the unrelenting scrutiny that comes with public life. Viewers witnessed not only a personal confrontation, but a moral reckoning that resonated far beyond the walls of the studio. The aftermath reinforced these truths. Conversations continued across social media, talk shows, and private discussions, but the tone had shifted. Admiration for Allison's steadiness and insight dominated the narrative. Her approach demonstrated that leadership and influence are earned through principle, not inherited through title or amplified by fame. For audiences invested in fairness, justice, and representation, this was more than entertainment. It was affirmation that patience, empathy, and preparation are not passive qualities but active forces capable of shaping outcomes and inspiring respect. In this light, the confrontation transcended personal drama. It became a moment of inspiration, a reminder that standing firm in the face of pressure is an act of courage. Allison's calm, her unwavering adherence to principle, and her insistence on truth over theatrics provided a lesson applicable far beyond television studios. It was a call to action, urging viewers to value integrity, to speak with clarity, and to trust in the strength that comes from preparation and ethical conviction. The broader societal implications were impossible to ignore. Audiences saw in Allison a model of how to navigate power dynamics thoughtfully, how to maintain composure under scrutiny, and how to assert authority with respect and empathy. Her performance validated the experiences of those who had long felt overlooked or underestimated. Showing that courage is not loud, but it is decisive, that influence does not require intimidation, but clarity and principle. As the broadcast faded from screens, the lessons remained. Viewers were left reflecting on the power of truth, the importance of composure, and the enduring impact of integrity. The confrontation had revealed not only the vulnerabilities of those accustomed to privilege, but also the extraordinary potential of those who combine skill, empathy, and moral courage. It was a reminder that heroism often comes quietly, but its effects resonate loudly across communities, cultures, and generations. In the end, the true victory was not in spectacle or viral attention, but in the affirmation that dignity, fairness, and perseverance matter more than fame or authority. In moments of tension, true character emerges, leaving a mark on everyone watching. The confrontation between Allison Hammond and Meghan Markle became more than television history. It became a symbol of values that endure, a testament to courage under pressure, and an inspiration for anyone who has ever faced scrutiny, expectation, or challenge with integrity. As the screen faded to black and viewers digested what they had just witnessed, one truth lingered. This confrontation was, more than entertainment, it was a lesson in courage, clarity, and integrity. Allison Hammond had demonstrated that calm, preparation, and principle could prevail over fame, ego, and spectacle. She had shown that true strength is not loud or aggressive, but quiet, deliberate, and unwavering. For millions, it was a moment of validation, inspiration, and reflection. Now, the conversation extends beyond the studio. How do we navigate moments of tension in our own lives? How do we stand firm when scrutiny or expectation weighs heavily upon us? The broadcast served as a reminder that integrity matters, that composure under pressure earns respect, and that the courage to act with principle can change not only the moment, but the world watching. Every viewer who witnessed Allison's poise carries that lesson forward, in workplaces, classrooms, homes, and communities. This is your invitation to be part of the dialogue. Reflect on what you've seen, share your perspective, and join a community that values dignity, accountability, and thoughtful discourse. Subscribe to stay connected to stories that go beyond headlines, that explore character, courage, and consequence. Share this video with those who value honesty and principle. Comment below with your thoughts, because every voice adds to the conversation and amplifies the lessons learned. The story does not end here. The clash between Allison and Meghan reminds us all that in moments of tension, real heroes emerge, not those who command attention, but those who command respect. And when we witness it, we are inspired to act, to stand, and to carry forward the values that truly matter.